I don't have to right now. It's weird. So we may have some more youth kind of dribble in here. A lot of them are in college, but they'll be back for Youth Sunday, which will also be a little bit on our Northern Ireland trip and healing divisions. But we got a few of our youth here, Kendall, Tommy, and Katie so far, so you'll get to hear from them. I put out in the audience there 3 of the picture books. Oh no! So you can pass those around, kind of look. That book was put together by Austin Peace, just kind of going through photos of the trip and all that they did. So we'll kind of go through it. Northern Ireland youth trip. So the youth stayed at Corrymeela. We've talked a lot about Corrymeela over the past year. The adults were able to spend a day there. So Corrymeela is people of all ages and Christian traditions who individually and together are committed to the healing of social, religious, and political divisions that exist in Northern Ireland and throughout the world. So one of our main goals was to kind of learn more about just how to live with and heal divisions that exist in our lives, in school, in the country, and everything else. Why won't this next photo come up? It's not working. Interesting. It's this right here. Now you can kind of see it, but when you present, it's gone. Interesting. Okay, we'll just make this really big. So we played some different games for me that kind of looked at kind of living, working together. So this was called Raising the Stick. Would any of y'all like to share a little bit about what this, or Lowering the Stick, what this was supposed to be about? Kendall, go.
Okay. So this was pretty much just to work on, like, I think it was just working together and just seeing what strategy worked best. So I feel like a lot of people were yelling. I feel like there was a lot of yelling, but the group that was not yelling at each other, so my group, actually won. So it kind of just showed like teamwork and and they were like, we had to use a bunch of different people's ideas, so we had to like work together and listen to everyone.
So what was the goal of the exercise? What were you trying to do?
Everyone had to keep their hands on the stick the whole time and lower it to the ground. And so like if someone's hands came off the stick, then you have to restart. And so you had to get it all the way to the ground.
So the adults did this game at Corrymeela as well. So Pam, Bobby, Heidi, y'all were there. Do you remember how that went with the adult group?
It was really hard.
They could not do it very well. Now, to be fair, 2 of the groups of the youth got it down pretty quickly. One of those groups was not the guys here. So yeah, they kind of learned on that. And then we had a special game called Red, Blue, and Green. That was everyone's favorite. And by favorite, I mean least favorite. So in Red, Blue, Green, the goal of the exercise is to end the game with positive points. It never says to beat the other team, but that's kind of how it turns into. So Tommy, share a little bit about your experience with the Red, Blue, Green.
So at the end, it came down to a decision where we could put out a piece that would get us positive, but it would get the other team more negative. So it wasn't my decision, but the group decided we would put out a piece where both teams would just stay even where they were at. And
You both lose.
We did both lose, yeah. That was a little frustrating, but the group decision.
So how did it start out? How did the game kind of start out for your group? You weren't in my room, right? You were in the other room, or were you in my room? No, you were in my room. Other room. I was with Joey.
I was with Joey.
Yeah, you were in my room.
It kind of started. Joey was the one who he was doing a bunch of math on the paper, and he was trying to figure out some strategy where we could get the most amount of points every time, and it did not work. So then after that, we kind of just decided we would just wing it every round and just see what happened.
And so we had times you could kind of confer with the other group, because for a while, like this group, the room I was in, was winning, and they had like a conference. So who went out for the conference? It was you and Austin?
Me and Austin.
So Austin suggested what at the conference?
So he made an offer where we would both put out the same piece. So both teams would be positive for the rest of the time, which is what the goal was. And I did not take the offer.
Did you say you were going to take the offer?
I did, yeah, I did.
So kind of unhanded, that group went the other way. So it looked like they were going to be way out in the lead, but then the other team started catching up, and both groups were in the negative. So it was another conference, and this time I believe it was Kendall and Allison who went out? Or was that the last one? Oh, it was Jacob and Emma, the two siblings went out to confer, and that didn't get us too many places. So then people are starting to get a little upset about like trying to win, and then maybe realizing they shouldn't have been trying to trash the other team quite so much, because now that neither are going to reach their goal. So you're supposed to only get 2 conferences, but then I think our group asked for another conference. It was hard for the adult leaders to keep our mouths shut during this, but we did. So then Kendall and Allison went out to talk. So Kendall, what did you and Allison talk about in that last conference, before the very last round?
I think it started by Allison yelling at me because we weren't going along with what they wanted to do, and apparently the whole time their plan was to have both teams win, but our team kind of went more at it as like a we want to beat you kind of thing, like we want to win and we don't want you to win. And then I think we just discussed the different ways that we could end the game, and like she asked me like, I think she made me like pinky promise her that I would do the same, like that I would go in and tell everyone to like do it so that we could both win, or I think so we could both lose. And she just kept, I told her that I'll try, but I don't know if I can convince the rest of the team. But so that was pretty much it. And then I had to go in and tell the team both and have us both lose.
So Katie, you were in the other room, right? Were you in? James, all 4 of us in the same room? Well, that's not fun. So in the other room, it was interesting what I hear. I think I still have in my phone some quotes taken during the game. Some classic quotes. This is a game I'd like to play with Session one day, but now you can learn all the secrets of it. But it's interesting. I know. So you don't have any instructions. Basically, you have to choose colors, either red, blue, or green. And if you choose a color and the other team chooses a certain color, you can either get plus points, minus points. It's all kind of statistics. So let me find some of the notes. So our group was wanting to really kind of beat the other team. Did I delete these?
It's funny because Stephen and I were both on this team too. So
Everybody.
all of us were on this team. Although we weren't participating, we were just taking notes.
That was funny.
And I had some great notes here, but now I think I may have deleted them all. But there's some great, just like lines people had, like this isn't about, but Tommy was very into, he had some good quotes there about, we're Americans, we're gonna win. And so we got very competitive. The other group, Austin at first was very into like also winning and transferring the team, and Jacob was kind of like, well, maybe we can all win, because the goal was just to have positives at the other team. By the end of the time, Austin was like, you know what, maybe we need to not try to win so much, we can all come together. Jake was like, no, trounce them. So the roles kind of switched. I know, like our group, it got pretty tense after a while, because
Very tense.
Very tense.
There were tears. There were
tears.
There was a lot of screaming.
I think both it was the competitive nature, but then also realizing we shouldn't have been doing it this way. Because often we make competitions of things that aren't meant to be competitions. This game was never a competition. We assumed it was a competition. It just said the goal is to end on positive points. It didn't say to get more positive points than the other group. It just said you want to end on positive points. Just like in real world examples, if 2 countries are both having starving people and their goal is to not have their kids in their country starving, it doesn't necessarily mean you have to make the other kids starve so your kids, how can you work together? but we often make things it's us or you. And that's immediately what happened with both groups. They're turning an exercise just to try to get positive points into an exercise of competition. And that's so often of life. We turn things into, for somebody to win, somebody else must lose. And I think some of the quotes, I wish I saved them all, were very much like, we want to make them lose badly so they cry. That's just kind of how we go. James, do you have any recollections from Red, Blue, Green that you want to share?
A lot of screaming. That was kind of a whole, but it was a fun game though. Taught a lot of lessons.
So this kind of picture is something that we did afterwards with the facilitators of just kind of what we, so this kind of thing of what are they going to do? It was often, instead of thinking what we should do, it was what are they going to do so we can react to them rather than us picking what's best, for our group, what's going to be best. It's reactionary. There's a lot of trash talk. I did film, I think, somebody filmed Tommy and Austin's first parlay, and that was amusing, to say the least. There was some gender dynamics and personality dynamics of both groups kind of said the guys kind of took a larger role and were talking, where the girls didn't feel they'd get as much in and say. But by the end, it felt like at least in our group, Kendall and Katie had more to say, and they kind of turned their votes and voice kind of turned the tide of how we ended up deciding everyone lost. So all kids starved instead of one country having some food for their kids. But they didn't want to have one group have bad feelings in their mouth that the other group kind of betrayed them at the end. So kind of this question of would you do it different?
Do you want to make this full size?
I cannot for some reason. Whenever I do that, the picture goes away. I can try to make it slightly bigger. I cannot. It's a disappointment. But it's the whole idea of imagine if we all got positive scores. But now, because of the way we did things at the beginning, we crossed the Rubicon. There was no way for both to get positive scores. Now we both have to lose. And so sometimes in our actions, we didn't have the whole picture. So I think we kind of learned that sometimes you have to try to step back, see the whole picture. And one of the things that we kind of learned was some of the groups eventually realized in that first parlay, if we all just choose blue the whole time, both teams will end on a positive score. But often people don't do that because, again, they make it into a competition instead of allowing both teams to win. So that was kind of an interesting exercise. I think it definitely got some introspection for people, and it was interesting to see how different people related, spoke up. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, it started out as kind of a fun game, kind of trash talking, and then it's kind of realized, okay, this probably has greater meaning, and maybe we should think about this differently. So the talking, the decision making changed throughout the course of the game. Katie, do you have any final thoughts on Red, Blue, Green?
It kind of summed it up. We kind of just had the two sides at the end on our team. It was like the side who wanted to win and they lose and trick them, or the side that wanted to both lose. So that was kind of interesting to see.
Now, do you think after this game you got less competitive in future activities at Corey Mila?
Not really.
Not really. So our last day there, we also had some activities. And I think we ended up dividing like guys and girls, right? No. We did? Like the last one, we had like the blind carry the ball and that tap the thing, and the gutter ball. I think it was just guys and girls.
Was it? No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. It was just two different groups. Okay. I know my group got really into trying to beat records and everything, which they did. So then one day we went to. Why won't any of these pictures work? Sad. We went to Northern Ireland. So there's a picture there. It exists. We did a tour of Belfast and did kind of one of those political mural tours. For the adult group, we did the tour with people from both sides kind of share. We didn't do that one. We did kind of another one. We went to the Peace Wall, and everybody kind of, they signed, we got some pictures there. But what did y'all learn about some of the divisions that existed and exist in Northern Ireland? Katie, you have the mic, so you get to go first.
They were very split and divided into like two sides, and it was interesting to see like the effect that that had on like the town and community, and like how everyone's like minds were like separate and like changed.
Tommy, what did you learn about the divisions in Northern Ireland?
I think the part that I took away was how like you could be living next to somebody, but over top of your houses you have protected gates, you know, for stuff being thrown over the wall by your next door neighbor that you share a backyard with. Is kind of changing.
Yeah.
I just thought it was interesting that even after all these years, like it's not as like obviously it was a bigger war back in the past, but now like you can still tell that they still don't like each other. Like the tour guides would talk about the other sides in like different ways, and you could just tell that they still don't like them, and the fact that they still had to have these walls because people were still throwing things, and it was just interesting to me that it's still going on after all this time, and you can see the clear division on both sides.
James.
It was definitely a cool experience because they still had gates that closed at night, kind of separated the different sects. And it was also, I forget what the names, it was around July, like June, where they
The glorious
set the
12th.
pallets. So we had to see some piles of pallets where they build giant towers and burn, kind of. It was the lead king, which king was
William.
it?
Yeah. Prince Billy. William.
Those was definitely a cool experience.
Yes, they have these leading up to the anniversary of the Battle of Boyne. The reason they choose that date is interesting. But back when Prince William kind of entered in, they had these bonfires to help kind of steer him in. So they still have these giant bonfires today. I mean, they pack pallets 3-4 stories high. The Protestant side to light these big fires, and of course they'll throw like Irish flags on those fires and burn them. So sometimes people try to, from the other side, go and steal the Irish flag back or knock down their bonfires. So it's a lot of kind of in-your-face taunting. Of course, the nationalist community has a different day where they kind of do bonfires. So it's a lot of kind of in-your-face stuff. Now, sometimes the bonfires are so high they end up like melting windows of nearby buildings, and they can cause big problems. But it's this kind of very nationalistic, our side, hip hip, hurrah kind of thing. And it's good to have pride in your country, your neighborhood, your team, whatever. But when it's at the expense of somebody else, it kind of fosters more of these divisions, and it kind of ends up hurting people more. So this was kind of a note that, so what did we know before? We knew there were walls. We knew there was an issue of unionist and secessionist. And we kind of talked about like, what did we see? We saw the murals, all these different murals. So on the kind of unionist side, the Protestant side, there's a lot of murals kind of lamenting those that have died. In the Catholic nationalist side, you have a lot of more memorials to the martyrs and kind of heroes of their side, but also more of the peace side. So on the nationalist side, you get a lot of solidarity with Palestine. On the unionist side, the Protestant side, you have a lot of solidarity with Israel. In part because the other side is Palestine. We must be Israel. It only makes sense. But also it goes with being the occupiers and the occupied. So the nationalist side kind of, they have affinity for Palestine because they know what it's like. What they say is to be occupied by an outside force, not being able to control your own destiny. So you have this kind of dynamic going on too. And you have a lot of flags around. We kind of noticed that. Flags in Belfast, the Union Jacks in July, the tricolour Irish flag. And I kind of see, what flags do we see at home? And you kind of see like, who has like Trump flags out there. There was a question, is there a Biden flag? No one's ever seen one. What does that say? U.S. flag. The questions of should you have a national flag in the pulpit, and what do flags mean? Are they a positive thing? Are they a put in your face thing? What's the intention of the flag? So when driving around, which flags did you see more of as throughout all of Northern Ireland? What do you think you saw more of? The British flag or the Irish flag?
I think I saw more of the British.
British, what about y'all?
Yeah, so that's
So there's some neighborhoods that are much more British. You drive through, they have it all decorated up. When I was there in 2022, it was the big celebration of Queen Elizabeth, her 75th year or something. So they were super decked out in red, white, and blue, and Queen stuff everywhere. But in certain towns, like in Londonderry, you'll see certain neighborhoods painted the curbs to say this is the Protestant Unionist neighborhood. Then you might have another area painted, but it seemed like more often the Unionist Protestants would kind of really show their colors to say this is this neighborhood. You're not welcome here. My mic just go out? Kind of. That's bad. So the intentions of flags. What do you think some of the intentions of the flags were? Why do you think people were putting their flags up all over the place?
so they could clearly show like where they stand and like what they believe in, and to show what community they were a part of, so that everyone would know and that they could support their side and just get that word out.
Yeah, clearly so this is our group, this is who we stand for. Anybody else have any thoughts?
And it's kind of like what you said about rubbing it in your face. It's not, you're not talking to someone or telling them, but you're kind of just letting them know that you're there.
Yeah. Sometimes it's kind of like it's a way to have a conversation. We don't have to have a conversation. It's telling somebody what you believe and who you are without having to actually dialogue. Because it's the one thing. Kind of like sometimes a Facebook post where you turn off the comments. Like, I can put it out there, but you have to see it, but you can't respond back. So it often goes with motive. Something I just thought about, in South Carolina for a long time we had the Confederate flag on the State House. And a lot of people said, well, this is about our heritage and our culture, and it's remembering who we are. But if you go back to why it was put up in the first place, the date was put up during the Civil Rights Movement. Never was up before that. It was put up then as kind of a remember your place, remember kind of who you are to the black community. And it was more about sending a message to them and wasn't about haters. People try to turn into that later. So there was a motive there of division. So that still happens. For the adults that went on the trip, when we did the tours with both kind of sides, it felt like sometimes people were trying to keep alive the hatred. And they might say we don't want to, but they were trying to keep it alive. And there could be a couple of reasons for that. And sometimes we felt kind of odd about touring this area. But they get all their money from tourists, so in some ways they got to keep the animosity going so tourists come in and see it. And there's good and bad in that, right? It's bad in that mind you're keeping these kind of hurt feelings up, you keep these murals going. But the positive side is you're getting money into communities that don't have that money otherwise that helps people out. So it's one of those like catch-22s. If you go, maybe you're supporting keeping divisions going. If you don't go, you're economically hurting an area that needs it. So which is worse? These are some of the tough choices of life that aren't very often completely pure choices of you only get good and there's no bad from that choice. Often every choice has both positives and negatives involved. So one of the days then we went to First Derry in Londonderry, and the group, this picture disappeared. Why did all these pictures disappear? Anyway, they led worship there. So what was it like? Tell us about your any kind of memories or thoughts on going to First Derry. We got a little tour of the area first, and then we led worship. So James, you get the mic to start with. What was some of the experiences of going to First Derry in Londonderry?
Before the service, we did fellowship with the whole church, so it was fun to sit down and talk and meet all the new people. And then the sanctuary is 2 stories. It was nice, beautiful sanctuary. It was a fun experience.
Now, the adults got freshly made scones, and I really hyped up these scones for the youth, and then they only got like packaged cookies, and I felt kind of bad, because I really hyped up these really good scones and tea, but I do think Tommy tried every kind of cookie they had.
I remember that the church, the congregation itself was really small, which was different from like what we're used to on a daily basis, or not on a daily basis, but every Sunday. And so I just thought, but like it just seemed like such a close-knit community, like especially before, like you could see everyone talking together, and like James said, it was just nice to get to talk to everyone and just learn a little bit about them and like they would ask you about yourselves. It was just nice to get to talk to them and be able to interact with them.
And kind of what they said, it was such a welcoming community. We got there and immediately there were just people coming up, yeah, how you doing? Never met you before, but they were just trying to get to know you.
I took away that they were very friendly and like just getting to hear their stories and like their views on like the fighting and stuff and like the split in the town and how like people had different opinions, but it was nice to see like how it all like kind of conjoined. And also like just being in the service was really cool, like in that area.
Yeah. They ended up singing a song that they'll also do for a youth Sunday in a month, and it was kind of cool. There was like one lady in the front row who was kind of singing along with them. The song came up after, so that song was really meaningful to her. And some of you got to listen to David Latimer when he was here. So that church had been more kind of prompted to kind of deal with some of the divisions and reach across to the other side, and we're more used to that. But with David being gone, the church has kind of shrunk a bit too, and kind of interesting how much more are they working on that, reaching across the aisle kind of thing. And so it shows the importance sometimes of things being congregation-led and not, pastor-led. If a pastor leads and they're the one pushing everything, then it can stop. If it's the congregation really caring about something, it doesn't matter who the pastor is, the things keep happening. Which is one reason it's great to have that Presbyterian system, because things are always meant to be kind of by the people, what the membership cares about, and keeps those things going. Now, so on our trip, we went to Derry, went to Belfast. We did a lot of work with Coromila, with different people talking and sharing. But every day, at the end of the day, we always kind of asked questions. And we had to answer. What was something you learned? What was something you enjoyed most? And what will you always remember about the day? Because sometimes what you remember is not what you enjoyed. It might be something crazy. It might be some joke. It might be something shocking. So, there's many days, so we'll start with Katie this time. What's a couple things you learned, a couple things that just stick out that you remember, that's kind of are seared in your memory from the trip, and what are some things you just really enjoyed about the trip?
Something I learned was more about just the fighting and the troubles, and like I didn't know there was a peace wall there, and just like seeing how divided the town was really like interesting, and how like the fighting is still kind of not happening, but like it's still split and divided, and they're still like remembering it. Some memories were definitely the car window breaking on our drive. That was pretty interesting, and just seeing the view, the ocean, and like the structures were just really, really cool to see, and just like will always like stay in my brain. And some things I enjoyed, right?
Yep.
Were just like being in like the communal room. At the end of every night, we would just like talk there, watch like concerts or videos, or just like play games. And I think I'll just really like stick with that, and that was just really enjoying.
There was a lot of dancing in the common. We had like one little lounge area this hours, so they would turn on these YouTube videos. What was the game? Just Dance. And like you had to pick a person to follow their dance movements. So just kind of watching all these different kids kind of dance. Some groups you had to like group dance and like make a human bicycle and everything. I think James even eventually danced with the group, which is great. So she mentioned the bus window breaking. Claudia, would you like to share the story of the bus window breaking?
So I was in the back of the bus with my back to the window, and he went over a curb, and it just like shattered. And I actually had glass in my underwear. We had to go to the next stop. I had to take everything off in the bathroom and shake it out.
So we go down this curb in Bushmills where they make the whiskey. I hear this glass shatter. Look back, and the person who's like by the window in the back is one Tommy Steelman. So I'm like, Tommy, did you just break the window? That's my immediate thought. But they said like the window was like duct tape before that, so it wasn't the best shape. But yeah, it just kind of completely shattered. So they did give us that bus ride free, so we got money back. And so we actually asked the youth, well, what do you want to do with this? Probably $250 for the day. You know, we could use it to get some food or do whatever. And they chose to give it back to Corrymeela just for them to continue their work and everything. So it was really cool. The youth decided to do that with the money instead of, hey, let's go do something else fun. Let's have a pizza party. Let's use it back home for a youth group. It was, no, we want to share with Corrymeela for them to keep doing their work. So Tommy, a couple things you learned, memories kind of seared, and things you really enjoyed.
I think one thing I learned is how the conflict between the two sides, it wasn't just that one area where the wall was. You know, everywhere in Ireland you go, you hear stories about the hate, and you see different flags and the different neighborhoods that are blocked off. And I just think it was kind of eye-opening that it's not just one part of the island, it's kind of across the whole thing. I think one thing I'll remember is the Irish Oceans they're very cold. It was worth it though.
I mean, Jacob almost got hypothermia, but worth it.
And then one thing I enjoyed, it was probably what she said, just getting to hang out and with people you haven't seen in many years, and just play games and talk and have fun.
One thing I learned was there are a lot of famous people who are Ulster Scot with it.
Yeah, Scots, Ulster Scots. We learned a lot.
We sat there for like a half an hour, and the guy just listed off a bunch of names of people, and we were all just sitting there, and it was quite the experience. And I feel like not only did we learn a lot about like the conflicts in Ireland, but I feel like we all learned a lot about each other through the activities we did at Corrymeela, and just being able to be with like each other for so long. I think we've all known each other for almost our whole lives, and we see each other every Sunday, but we've never really spent like a whole 12 days together in a foreign place together. It was just a good experience to learn a lot about each other. I feel like there's a lot of things, like the whole trip is just a very memorable experience, a lot of things that we'll be able to take with us for the rest of our lives. Like the red, blue, green game is definitely something I don't think any of us will ever forget. And I think another thing is there was a concert going on in
Glastonbury.
Yeah, Glastonbury, and we would stay up till super late every night, or I think there's only 3 nights actually, but listening to the concert, and it was just a really cool experience. What did I miss?
What you really enjoyed?
Kind of again, like just like the whole thing. I don't know. I just feel like getting able to know each other more and hanging out and playing.
The Great Dalmuti.
The Great Dalmuti. I was not very good at it though. I was actually really, really bad. But it was still a fun experience.
So one of the things we talked about, questions like at the end of our trip, was what was something you learned about somebody else? And because we all learned about each other, things like who doesn't like dessert or ice cream, you know, who loves pineapple, or just different things about each other. And at the end of our very last night, we had these awards. Everybody had to like share an award with somebody else. We gave a little pillow from the Corrymeela Cree worship area, the Pillow Awards. So everybody got an award just for something. But it was really cool to kind of see all the group hang out, play games together, support each other. And Bert was on crutches and a little boot, so it was so nice helping her up and down rocks, or riding in the cab with her when everybody else kind of had to walk down, so we would ride with her and all that. James, your turn.
So, me, Tommy, Austin, and Jacob ran into these, I'd say 12-year-olds down at Valley Castle.
Oh, the wee little racists.
Yeah, but before that, they taught us this sport called hurling, which the best way to describe it is lacrosse and rugby in one with a wooden bat. And so it was cool to learn. I mean, they were pretty good at it, so it was cool to learn that. Something I always remember is when me, Pastor Stephen, and Joey played golf at the Valley Castle Golf Course. It was right along the coast, so there's some pictures with the ocean in the background and all the hills. It was definitely very cool.
We lost a lot of golf balls.
18, one every hole, I think. And then what I enjoyed was definitely building back connections with all the people. Some of them I haven't seen for years. We've all kind of gone our separate ways. It was kind of fun for a week to, rebuild those connections.
So if anyone needs more explanation on the wee little racists. So there are these kids that taught them hurling. But then I think you saw them again, right? And they had some strong views about lots of different kinds of
We were sitting
people.
in a meal, and they saw them out the window, and they went,
They had these terrified look on their faces, like these 12-year-old boys, like, oh my gosh, I hope they don't come in here. But yeah, they spewed a lot of hate. But I think it also goes to show that hate's taught really early. And it wasn't just about Protestants or Catholics, it was about a lot of different groups, and even these 12-year-old kids. And then, of course, later in our second last night there, penultimate night there, we had the wee little vapors. Anybody want to share about the wee little vapors?
Basically, we were at Corey Mila and we were sitting in our lounge, and I think, was it people in the hallway saw them first, or were they out the window?
I think they saw out the window
They
first.
saw them out the window, and there were just a bunch of teenage, I would say
Yeah,
preteens.
teenagers.
They were like 9 to 12, I'd say, and they're just like running back and forth like through the window or like across our windows and being very, very loud. And then we would just look over and we would just see them like. It's like smoke coming out of their mouths, and they're just running around the place like vaping, and we're all so confused. And then they ended up being inside, like they were inside for a little, and they were talking to, like if we would leave our, like it was dangerous to leave our lounge because they would immediately start to, and it was very interesting, but luckily they only stayed like a night, I think, so.
We did have a conversation with Cornmelia leadership about them. Like, are they supposed to be vaping on the property? But there were some interesting interactions with the locals. That way. Claudia, something you learn, something you enjoy, something you always remember.
I think we were at the airport, what time did we get there?
We got there like, I don't know, like 5, 7.
Yeah, I think our flight was supposed to be 7, and we took off at 2:30 in the morning. So during that time, we kind of bonded. It was actually advantageous in the long run, I think, because we had to play games, we had to think up games, we had to figure out what we were going to do with the little money that we had, because, airport.
They did give us $15 that you could buy like one Coke with that. Everybody kept bringing, I had everybody's like cards, came on my phone. Everybody bring me food. I had to be like, that's too much. That's too much. Like, it's just a muffin and a water. It's more than $15, sorry.
Yeah, it was very eye-opening for them to realize how much things cost at the airport. So that was, I think, actually worked out for the best for us personally, because you get on the plane at 2:30 in the morning, you're going to sleep. If you get on 7:30, you might not sleep for a while. So we did miss out something the next day, but it worked out. I really just enjoyed seeing things through their eyes a little bit. I had been to Northern Ireland with the other group and had done most of the things before. Not everything, but most of them. And so seeing their eyes open was interesting and rewarding in that respect. I think Northern Ireland is a different conflict in that you can't tell which side people are on just by looking at them. Everyone looks the same. If you ask their name, you might know. But it's different from conflicts in other places, because everyone looks the same and maybe has the same kind of house and that kind of thing. So it's a little bit different that way. Yeah.
What will you always remember?
What will I always remember? I think seeing Jacob walk back from the swimming when he was had everyone's sweater on.
And they sit in the hot tub.
Well, there was a bathtub,
Yeah.
not a hot tub.
A tub of hot water.
And then we didn't know where he was.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was the time that Jacob went out running.
He said, I'm just gonna take a little run. Okay, it's 8 o'clock at night. I'm gonna take a little run. Okay, it doesn't get dark till 11 maybe, 10.
Well, it wasn't before 8 o'clock. It was like 6 o'clock.
Okay, whatever.
He ran like 17 miles though. So we're all like, where's Jacob?
We were sending out bulletins, trying to figure out where he went. He didn't take his phone or his wallet, you know, so we didn't know where he was. So he came back and we're like, where were you, where were you? I told you I was going for a run.
Not 17 miles worth. Yeah, so fun times had by all. Yeah, so, I think looking back at the whole trip and just what we learned and the memories, I think one of the goals of the trip was, I think, to learn more about the Scots-Irish, the heritage, the troubles and peace. But I think, as they said too, just those connections with each other. So much about church is in connections, just the love you have for each other. I'll talk about it in the sermon today, though, about the importance of having that kind of community. And as they kind of said, we had college kids going, the high school kids, people who maybe have been gone for a couple of years, but just kind of reconnecting and seeing the group really kind of all kind of be cohesive. There were no individual little groups, but this little group always stayed off on their own. Everybody was doing stuff together all the time, just having fun. Some things, just kind of things that stick out in my memory. I wasn't on the boat. We took a little boat tour along the coast and up to one of Rathlin Island, and there were dolphins swimming alongside the boat, and it was kind of rocky at times. In the one boat, Claudia's boat, they were singing so loud and everything. The captain said, "Hey, you're so loud, why don't you fall out of the boat? I'm not going to be able to hear it." And I think at one point the boat almost tipped over.
It felt like it anyhow.
Felt like it. It was kind of rocking a good bit. One thing to remember too, James on the way back on the ferry from Rathlin Island talked about meeting this old couple.
Oh,
And
yeah.
this is they're talking. James, tell me a story of meeting this couple and just having a conversation.
Well, it was on the ferry ride back from Rathlin Island. It was like 40 minutes long, and so I just look over and I just asked this guy, just kind of questioning him about Ireland and stuff. And it turned into like a 40-minute conversation. His wife doesn't have a passport. She's never been to America. We talked about Taylor Swift for a little. She was in Dublin at the time. It was just kind of cool to see what similarities we had and what differences. So it was definitely enjoyable.
You were the old person whisperer. There were other times when you had old people talk to.
I think sometimes the most interesting things at trips when you can just have conversations with people that live there, just normal connections talking. So those are some of the things that stick out. I do think it was kind of helpful to kind of have that long layover. When I flew out to Delhi a couple of weeks ago, we flew out from the exact same gate. So I had a little bit of post-traumatic stress of, oh my gosh, we're gonna be a 5-hour delay again. But yeah, we get there and we do things like, cross a rope bridge on to an island, just kind of sitting there. And I think Kendall and Natalie decided this other island was going to be their new island. And what did you name your island?
Yeah, Bojangles, I think, is what Austin recommended the name should be, so.
Excellent. Just kind of naming islands. Going to Titanic, the museum there, and learning about Titanic and all the different Scots.
I think only one person had seen the movie.
Joey.
Yeah.
He was really wanting people to see
So
the movie.
no
He's
one
like, you're
had-
gonna cry if you see this movie. And then I think going to Derry and just kind of seeing that place. And Tommy spotted it first. I didn't even notice it, but we were up in the walls. He's like, there are a ton of people over there. He asked our guy, what are all these people doing? There's just hundreds and hundreds of people over there. So Tommy, do you remember what all the people were doing? Okay, so it was their cemetery day. So everybody goes back out to the cemetery, and the Catholic priest re-blesses the cemetery, but often it's both Catholics and Protestants out there, and they're kind of going and honoring the dead of that cemetery. So up on this hill was just all these people. Now some of us had watched Derry Girls. Anybody watched Derry Girls? Interesting thing that I experienced a couple weeks ago. After David Latimer came, one of his friends who he's doing this Peace Forest project initiative with, named Don Mullen, who's done a lot of peace work. He's an interesting guy. Since then we've been talking. He was one of the pallbearers for Desmond Tutu, and he knew Pele, the soccer player, really well, and is helping with the hospital stuff. But apparently his sister is the actual real-life inspiration for the nun in Derry Girls, the Catholic nun in Derry Girls. And there's a mention of kind of the Mullen family in the very first episode that kind of gives homage to that. And after meeting her, she was here too, visiting, talking, and just some of her comments, I'm like, yep, I see it completely. So that was kind of cool to have that connection with the Derry Girls show and all of that. So, in our last couple minutes, anything you want to add about the trip, why it was meaningful for you to be able to go, and what kind of lessons that will kind of keep with you from it?
It was definitely meaningful for me because I definitely saw myself change over the course of the trip. I kind of went in, kind of closed off, kind of keeping to myself, but then by the end of it, was pretty open and having fun with everybody. So it was
Dancing in the lounge.
so it was definitely fun.
I think for me, after COVID, our family didn't really go to youth group very much. We didn't really started to, I don't know, we just didn't come as much. And I think Ireland and getting to get back together with everyone definitely brought us back in and got us more connected with the church again. And I'm really grateful for that. So, and that was a big thing that happened for me.
And kind of what she said, how youth group the last few years, it's been me, my sister, and Joey for most of the time. You know, different families and stuff, they'll come in every once in a while, but I think getting together as a big group again and seeing all these friendships come back, it's good.
I think I remember how I was the youngest on the trip, so I kind of was born into these people around me being older figures in my life, and I getting to reconnect with them as friends was really cool. Again, and meet them again because COVID kind of split us apart, but it was nice to rekindle those friendships.
So if you read the E! News article by Austin this week, anybody read it? You really kind of see the importance of church and how the love of the church can stick with somebody from childhood on to college. And it's been interesting for me, I've been here 7 years now, you kind of start to see the maturity of junior high kids, now they're in college, and the change, but also what stays the same. And so he talked about just the importance of the church in his life, and the love and compassion, but also the generosity to let youth go on a trip like this. It really was a once-in-a-lifetime trip. And we kind of emphasize how lucky these youth were to be able to go at the cost. There was another group there from a Presbyterian church in Georgia, and we kind of asked their leaders how much it cost each student to be able to go on that trip. And I think he said it was $3,000 a student. That's a lot. And some of our groups had 3 kids from a family or 2 kids from a family. Because of the generosity of the church, the kids were able to go for $500 a person. And we kind of emphasize that and how lucky they are. It's really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Here's another church, they had to spend $3,000 a person. And so, they're grateful for the church to be able to do that. And hopefully you kind of see how important that is, that, both learning about Ireland and Cormian division, but also just the opportunity to reform those bonds. Sometimes you just don't get it the same way when you're in a building, the same church footing, but going and working, going on a trip and having a brand new experience that no one's ever done before, so you're all kind of on the same page and you're experiencing new and amazing things together. Those form bonds that last a lifetime, and memories that last a lifetime. They'll always remember, and that will be connected to Derry. So thank you to Derry for that. You'll hear more about the trip and some of the learnings at Youth Sunday, which is November 24th. So we did it that Sunday before Thanksgiving, so a lot of our college kids are waiting to be back. and participate in that who went on the trip as well. Anybody have any questions about the trip here? Charlie?
Ultimately, does the division make any sense to you? In any way, shape, and form, that there are two such opposing positions?
Yeah. Because the Protestants came from Scotland. They were English subjects. They passed that on. They still are loyal to the English government, to the British government. They feel that that's their home.
And the other side's like, we were here first, we had our own country, you took it from us, you took our opportunities, you still take some of our opportunities, and it hurts. Yeah. So, I mean, it makes sense we shouldn't have to happen, but it's the same thing with Israel and Palestine in a lot of ways. The same thing with India and Pakistan.
Yeah.
These divisions are often created by governments, though. They're created by people in the power, and the bottom people are the ones who suffer. But because they suffer, it etches in their memory. They've lost loved ones over this travesty, and they think if they just forget, they're not honoring their loved ones. We heard that a lot. Like, if we just forget this, what did they die for? Eventually, they kind of came to the realization, we don't want our kids to keep dying. We have to find a way for peace. So we're going to live together in peace, but we're not going to like each other still, because there's such a history and still a present of oppression and things. And when one side has been oppressed for a long time by another side, it's hard to just say everything's fine now.
I think it's changing now that they're mixing more, but in the past they were very segregated, and a mixed marriage was a Protestant Catholic marriage. So you did not have that mixing. They were in their own little spots.
95% of schools are still segregated, Catholic, Protestant, in Northern Ireland.
But at the same time, when I asked both the guides in the adult version of the trip to Belfast, how many people go to church, they were like, not very many. But that's their heritage. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not about a faith thing anymore. It's a completely kind of political issue of who we want to be governed by, what is our identity, and who gets what. For a long time, the Catholics weren't allowed to live in certain areas, weren't allowed to own homes, they couldn't vote, they didn't have enough jobs, they couldn't work in certain places, and so it creates major division, just like some of the pre-civil rights things here of, here's where white people can go to school, here's where black people can go to school, here's where white people can work, here's where black people can work. It's gonna be a division, and we still see it. It's better, but it's not completely healed in this country either. Jay?
A further observation, these murals were all over the place on walls and houses on both sides of the wall. And I'm thinking, every day when you walk out of your house, you're seeing this. And I think that also takes precedent that it's always on their minds.
Yeah. They said actually for the Protestant side, they've had more new recruits to the kind of armed paramilitary militia in the last 10 years than they have in like the past 50. So it's coming back again. They're still recruiting into these sectarian issues. And a lot of it's over EU things at this point, and just again, people like to cause division. I mean, like we see it in this country. There are bots and like people paid to go on social media just to create division, and it's easy. I mean, it's so easy to make a post that says something crazy, and everybody gets all riled up about it. I mean, it's easy to create division. We could create division in this church in 5 seconds with 5 words. It's hard to heal division. It takes generations. Stop, Bobby.
I just want to interject something here. This is from the driver that took my sister and I to the taxi driver, the Uber driver. His take on the whole thing, he was Roman Catholic. His take on the whole thing was Ireland. He said to me, Bob, he said, in 50 years, this country will probably be united. And his take on it was because the Catholic population in Northern Ireland is increasing. Roman Catholics have more children. The Protestant group don't have as many children. So his take was eventually, eventually, I mean, it's gone on for 300 years, but eventually the population in Northern Ireland will become more Catholic, and therefore the Protestants will be more fewer.
Yeah.
And his take was Ireland, which is what they all want anyhow, is to be a united country.
It'll be interesting to see. I think it'll eventually happen, but I think it'll be more complicated than that because of the economic parts too. With, does Ireland want the trouble of Northern Ireland? That's a question that's got to be answered. And then a lot of people, even the Catholics, like some of the benefits of being attached to the UK, like the better grocery store called Sainsbury's. You start losing some of that. According to I like Northern Ireland better because you have like better grocery stores and things because they have the connection to the UK. Certainly that can be lost. People don't always realize. So it might end up being something like the Brexit EU, where you leave the EU, but you have some special new rules. I think if Ireland ever is united, it's going to be kind of an interesting hybrid Ireland, still special relationship with the UK kind of thing. And it's going to have to be for something new. And often that's what it takes. It's not going to be one or the other. It's going to have to be a third way to really succeed. And that's what we learned about too in our group about conflict resolution style. Some are step back, some are I'm going to domineer and run it, some are let's compromise, and some are let's find a new solution that works, that's not just everybody giving something up. And I think that's going to have to eventually be the way it works. But those are hard to do. We see in our own country, it's hard to find common ground and find new solutions that solve the problems for everybody. Because we make it a competition, don't we? Between parties, we have to win and crush you. And not how can we make everyone succeed. It kind of happens with our red, blue, green game. Let's crush the other side. I think that's politics today. It's not how can we make this country work for everybody. It's how can we win and make the other side lose. And hopefully our youth have learned that doesn't have to be the way to work things out. Because our generation hasn't figured it out yet. So hopefully the new generation can. It's all up to you. All right, we're going to get up to church for Children's Sunday, but thank you all very much.